Welcome to Switched On Thinking, a podcast that explores the real-world networking challenges faced by businesses of today and the future. Twice a month, we deliver insightful and informative analysis of the key role that networking technology plays in driving business success and ensuring business continuity. Switched On Thinking is brought to you by NETGEAR, delivering innovative networking solutions you can count on, so you can spend more time on what matters most, growing your business. Now, here's your host, acclaimed author and tech columnist, Neil C. Hughes.
Welcome back to the Switched On Thinking podcast. Now, on this podcast, we have talked all about the shiny side of tech that excites consumers and businesses alike. But in the last episode, we took a peek behind the curtain and looked at all the tech that brings to life the digital experiences that we take for granted in theatres, lobbies and music venues. Yes, of course, I'm talking about switches, AV over IP and audio over IP. And a big thank you to the lovely messages from IT engineers, AV engineers and resellers that contacted us to thank us for sharing some of that unsung work that they do to make the digital experiences that some of us might take for granted look and sound so much better. So in the first part of this interview, we discussed the hardware and the difference that it's making. But today, I invited the guest back on the show to talk about the importance of services and support. So I invite you to join me once again in company with John and Laurent in the second part of our conversation. Like I said in part one of this podcast, IT vendors have often been accused of not speaking the same language as an AV team. So for these reasons, can you tell me a little bit more about the importance of service and support, and also how that too is equally as crucial to your customers as the hardware itself?
So I think part of the commitment that NETGEAR shows to the Pro AV community is our Pro AV engineering services team. And this shows you that we'll help you throughout the whole installation. So we don't want to just sell you the hardware or software. We want to actually make sure it works correctly. So we don't want to sell you a switch you don't need. We want to make sure you have enough power in there to equip your system as it needs to be. So as we sell you the switch, we also enable our free Pro AV engineering design services team to help you design the system. So we have people who are spread across the world who can respond within a few hours to an email request, and that email address is proavdesign@netgear.com. So as you're getting ready for an AV system, as you're designing that system, you can reach out to us and our trained engineers who know AV projects, and they know the IT part as well. They can help you design your system to make sure it's correct and has enough bandwidth, has enough capability that you need for your system. And they'll work with you before that system is even installed. And then we don't just stop there. Throughout the installation process, if you have a question or something arises, we can help troubleshoot that. These guys have spent weekends helping people and all hours trying to make sure that you get the job up and running, because we understand that problem when you're on site. So we'll work with you beforehand to design your system throughout the installation, and then afterwards as well. If you found some things that you would like to do differently or have us do differently on a switch, well, Laurent's part of that email address as well. Our engineering staff is part of that. So they hear all of these things that you're going through and your frustrations maybe, or your desires for a new type of switch. And we can help figure that out and help design the products that you want. So this design engineering services team really embodies the commitment that NETGEAR shows to the Pro AV community.
And I appreciate you probably can't share any names. You did mention that earlier in the podcast, but I'm going to cheekily ask, are there any other use cases or real-world stories of experiences that are all made possible thanks to the kind of technology that we're talking about today?
Something we learned over the years is that there's no exception. There is no AV application, nor there is any AV vertical that is not eligible to AV over IP, right? So the old legacy HDBaseT matrix switching, or the old legacy audio transmissions, analogic, and they all benefit. I mean, that's really true from AV over IP, because it brings flexibility. Most of the time, if not all the time, it drives cost down so that the AV installers and the AV customer can, maybe enjoy better quality displays, sources, and infrastructure, because the switcher in the middle is less expensive than before. And last but not least, it's future-proof. Because don't forget that any previous point-to-point or matrix legacy solution was a fixed solution. And AV keeps growing. It's growing. Today, you have 20 screens in your mall. I mean, I believe that in New Jersey, at this million square feet mall, that is the American dream, they have hundreds and hundreds of screens. Tomorrow, they will have maybe 1,000 of them because there is a proliferation of AV applications and needs for displays and speakers. So Ethernet is scalable. By nature, you can expand an Ethernet network. And before, all the money you got to spend on a switcher of some sort got to be thrown away because you got to go for a bigger switcher. So, to answer your question, yes, we have seen a lot. And that was my point first, saying that there's no exception from medical installations. And, that's when maybe then you want to differentiate some technologies over the others, because if your doctor uses a camera inside you, to explore something inside you, watching you, the inside on a big screen, you don't want any latency. At the time he will cut something, you know what I mean? So latency, quality, all these things play a big role, but depending on the level of AV or IP technology, we have seen a quantity of very impressive installations in medical and healthcare. I mean, that's absolutely incredible how many surgery rooms and hospitals are actually today leveraging AV over IP to practice, right, for surgery. Then after that, some personally coming from the IT, some applications that just ignored before, like command and control centers, for police or law enforcement or military. You have a lot of needs, of course. Also, not only the venues or the live events or the shows, but also education has been transformed literally about with AV over IP, especially now that we have schooling at home and intermittent activity into the classes. I mean, every single class should be able to receive and send information out to students in other classes. So there is a boom, there is a revolution going on right now across all K-12, all the way up to the universities and the colleges worldwide. So really, it is a great market to be. And for us, IT people, it's very refreshing because we discover applications and I would say atmospheres, that we would before have never known. So I could not, I just can't tell you the great concerts and venues. Despite I like that very much, but most of the time, as John said, they are so picky. They just don't want to disclose any of their vendors. But believe me, this is a great period of time.
And listening to you both talk today, I think what shines more than anything, possibly even more than the technology we're talking about, is both of your passion for it. So I've got to ask, what is it about that technology transition to AV over IP and driving the integration that excites you both so much and makes you want to jump out of bed and go to work in the morning?
Well, first of all, NETGEAR runs a business. So we are running a business. It's not charity, of course. So, the IT market is tough. NETGEAR is a worldwide leader for connectivity, both for homes and businesses, small and large. But, this is a saturated market and NETGEAR has market share, a lot of market share, but NETGEAR has to find new applications, new verticals, new technologies to keep growing because in this world, we need to grow. So the first excitement really for us happened probably almost 10 years ago now, when we understood that something profound, something important was going to happen. After the voice, do you remember, Neil, in the old days when we used to have telephones, with a wire?
Yeah.
So all that, went to IP and voice over IP for the companies. And then your smartphones today for consumers. Next big revolution over the time, maybe 15 years ago, was surveillance. All these BNC cabling for the video surveillance cameras, all that went IP. So a brand new application and a lot of new possibilities in terms of deployments and, partnerships and switch sales for NETGEAR. And 10 years ago, we identified that the AV was going to be very important because IP was going to move millions of audio endpoints and probably dozens of millions of video nodes to the IP world. Each node requires a port. So, this is a big business. So that's the first answer. And I got to tell you that because that's the case for all other networking vendors, despite the fact that many of them, so far probably prefer the broadcast, the SMPTE, the prestige jobs with even more complex techniques for the BBC and the TV channels and all that, which I respect. We at NETGEAR are not there. We don't have the infrastructure nor the solutions to do SMPTE with the BBC. So I would just want to say that fortunately for us, NETGEAR became important in the Pro AV world because that's a good reach for us and a nice fit. So that was the first reason. But the second reason, you know what? You really want to know, Neil?
Yeah, I do. And before you tell me that second reason, not only am I old enough to remember phones with a cable, I also remember the rotary phones where it took you forever to dial a number, but that's a different story.
Absolutely. So what is really driving our motivation is that with AV, there is room for innovation. So don't get me wrong. The Ethernet world, it's a world of innovation. Every year you have new protocols, new stuff out there, new enhancements. And I speak not only for switching, right? Outside of my scope, Wi-Fi with Wi-Fi 6, cable with the DOCSIS, hotspots. I mean, it's always innovating, but specifically for AV, there is room for innovation because everything I told you about the Dante Big Book, and we could go to a QSC and you could read the QLAN literature. You could go to AVB and be prepared. You need to maybe have a day off for that because AVB with the MSRP, the MMRP, and it's crazy difficult. I believe that there is room so that the Ethernet world should, do macros, offer wizards, simplify all that, package all that differently. So we started to do it. Today you learned that we have a new user interface, but I would like to maybe disclose to you something that kept me, and when I say me, the whole team busy for the past 2 years. Do you want to know what's that?
Yes, I'm intrigued.
Well, IT guys will understand, but we have re-engineered IGMP. And it's a big thing. IGMP is the multicast protocol for layer 2 operations of a multicast stream from a point A to a point B. And 100% of the AV over IP technologies from audio to video they have to, right, on multicast because one source can multicast to several destinations. And IGMP from the day one was deficient. Not because Ethernet guys, the Ethernet TCP/IP inventors were dumb, but because Ethernet at the beginning said IGMP is good for small multicast. A single switch. You, Neil, at home, you can have, some sources, some displays, some speakers, single switch, IGMP, all good. But as soon as a customer wanted to have multiple switches, because as you know, Ethernet can scale, so you need more ports, just add a switch, right? As soon as you plug a second switch and the third one and the fourth one, then IGMP was not working correctly because it was not designed for that. The point is that IGMP is closed. So when it's closed, you cannot have your, stream going out of the switch. It's only on that single switch. And when you want to open it, you just tell IGMP, please go mRouter mode on the uplinks. You are flooding the entire network with your source. So of course, it is not applicable, right? It's not possible. So IGMP was deficient, and the Ethernet guys said, well, of course, we have a solution for that. It's called multicast routing, PIM, source-specific mode, sports mode, rendezvous points, unicast routes, OSPF, and I have a long list of acronyms that I don't want to speak of today. So what does it mean? It means that for the large multicast installations, this time you need 3 engineers, assisting you, one for the OSPF, the other one for the multicast, and the third one for the source-specific mode. So, well, 2 years ago, we said that's enough. Not that because we don't have multicast routing. Of course, we have multicast routing. We do it, for a living in the enterprise sector or other applications from day one on our fully managed M43 and M45 switches. But it's so miserable, so complex, so even dangerous because it's prone to mistakes, right? So we said, well, IGMP is deficient. Let's fix it. And guess what? We did. We came live last year after many years of hard work. And, this is not something you can go and disclose, while you are at it, right? Because it's so complex and so big, so dangerous too. Just what if we would fail, So we had to wait until the last minute last year when we finally got out. I do remember very well. It was Infocom in the US. And we came live saying, well, bye-bye IGMP. Welcome to IGMP Plus. With IGMP Plus, you take a NETGEAR switch, you plug a second switch, and then a third switch, a fourth switch, dozens of switches, hundreds of switches together. IGMP will work and operate as if it was a single switch. So it is removing all the complexity from the fastidious layer 3 multicast routing techniques that we had to do before. And for the customers, well, one problem less, right? And the big one. Now we can scale using the well-known layer 2 IGMP technique without being anxious or without flooding an entire network and shut down the entire hospital, right? So, well, that's what keeps us very busy, but that's what I believe brings the most motivation to us. Because, of course, I will probably remain an IT guy until my retirement, maybe in 10, 15 years from now. But until then, I know there's room. The AV community deserves innovation, And when I say room, it's not only for hardware, it's not only for software, it's for the whole scope, including the professional services. Because, at the end of the day, Neil, if you're an AV customer, you don't buy hardware and software only. You need service and support because AV is complex. You have so many different things to connect together. Interoperability issue, is the norm. So we should also be able to innovate even more beyond what we are doing today in order to be even, a better fit, for facilitating this transition. So again, back to the mission statement, NETGEAR doesn't want to make it difficult. We are not like that, and this is not our position. Our way is to make it work. And I think there's a lot of room, and this is very exciting to make it work easy.
And you did say there that as soon as you retire, then you'll leave IT behind. But of course, you can't do that. You can leave IT, but you can never take IT out of it. It's in your veins forever now. And John, what about you? Where's your passion come from?
I think being the AV person coming into this, and again, I'm only about a year into NETGEAR, it's exciting to see that things are made easier. We want to help people deploy these projects. These are some amazing installations. The whole world is relying on more and more AV these days, as we all know, from shopping malls like we've talked about, to medical, as Laurent pointed out, to education. These other classrooms that are being built to accommodate the people that are socially distanced need to have instruction. So all these things they're doing, they're relying on AV, and it's more and more AV over IP. So for me coming into NETGEAR, it's exciting to see that commitment. And again, the desire to make things easier. Sure, we want to sell equipment and everything else. But what's fun is to get that attention and to hear the IT and AV engineers go, wow, I didn't know NETGEAR could do this, first of all. Because they hear about NETGEAR as a home wireless access point, or our fantastic Orbi Pro Wi-Fi solutions with your home wireless that I'm using here as well, all that kind of stuff they hear about, but they don't always think about us in a business sense. And those that knew, I think, were kind of keeping it secret because they knew the secret sauce, that our stuff would work really well. So for me to come in and find the attention and work with all these different manufacturers and different integration companies who are opening their eyes going, wow, this is really cool. It's a really fun place to be, and that's exciting to me.
Fantastic. Well, thank you both for so much for coming on here and sharing your insights with everyone today. But before I do let you go, we have covered a lot of ground. So can you remind everyone listening of where they can find you online, and also contact your team if they've got any questions?
It's easy, Neil. We have a special website for all the Pro AV stuff we do. It's netgear.com/ProAV. Specifically for the new 4250 line, it's easy to get to as well, netgear.com/M4250.
What really stands out for me on our conversation today is you came across those legacy issues. You created this web GUI that's just a complete game changer for AV engineers with the M4250. But you're not resting on your laurels. Even now, I'm hearing you both saying, there is still room for innovation, and that excitement and that passion to continuously improve everything you do really comes across. So a big thank you for taking the time to share that with everyone listening.
Thanks, Neil. Really appreciate the time. It's been fun.
Thank you.
I hope you enjoyed part 2 of the conversation today, where we further explored the world of AV over IP and audio over IP. And for me personally, I loved hearing about the complex technology that brings digital experiences to life, and how the GUI on the M4250 is a complete game changer for AV engineers. But what I loved especially in the second part of the interview is the importance of services and support. But you know what? What I think I loved more than anything was sharing more about what goes under the hood at NETGEAR. Learning more about what motivates people like John and Laurent and their teams, and how it's their passion and determination to make a difference in solving problems for their customers that is responsible for the products that they produce. That's it for today's episode of Switched On Thinking. If you enjoyed the show as much as I did, please leave a rating and review, and join me again in 2 weeks, where we will further explore how NETGEAR and its partners are solving the real-world business and home networking challenges of today and the future.